All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome to In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I like it. It sounds like it's falling apart, and then it's quite resolved at the end. Today is April Fool's Day. Wow! Okay, so it's the 1st of April, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Let me get this thing out of the camera. In the Image Clothing Company podcast is where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. There was something in front of the lens of the camera. We are available in video plus audio and then just audio only. 2 ways of checking this out. I love that it's April Fool's Day because this is actually episode 91 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled No Opinion I Could Have. And it's funny because I'm talking about things as real as they are it's just the 1st of April, but it's like a quote-unquote holiday, at least in this part of the earth and in this time period. I don't know why it is what it is, but it's a day where people often pull practical pranks on each other and things. And so I actually love that it's today. I didn't plan it to be this episode on this day, but I'm talking about things that are just as real as they are, that there's no opinion I could have on them. And maybe that's a good thing, because on a day like today, when people are pulling pranks and jokes and trying to make things something that they aren't, I'm speaking on things as real as they are. So, the paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ is kind of ironic, but it is what it is. So, as I say, you don't need to believe me. In fact, please don't. I ask people not to. If you would, please don't believe me. That's kind of weird, but I really mean it. I also say often, please leave me alone, because I say some things that are so bold because they're truth. Truth is apart from all of us, and that's what I'm going to discuss within this, is especially things within the human body. Is going to be, as far as I'm aware, before even saying it, the majority of the bulk of what this episode is, because episode 91 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled No Opinion I Could Have, is going to be a place I can refer people back to when they do have a problem with me. When the guitar just made a sound by itself. The capo probably just slipped a little bit. When people have a problem with how bold I can be about how seemingly right I'm trying to be, or I think I am, but that's why this episode is going to be here, among just other reasons of speaking it as it is. But I'm going to discuss things in here so thoroughly to the point where there's no opinion that I could have. I know that the things we talk about within the human body under In the Image Clothing Company, because our whole key word, allowing the human body to work, there's nothing that we can ever do to get our bodies to work better. It's just a machine. I talk about it, and we'll have this whole intro as we do, and then we'll get into the discussion, but this is also kind of the discussion. Just there'll be an intro somewhere within here. Sometimes that happens in the Image Clothing Company podcast episodes. You can't ever train your body to do anything. It's a physical mechanical machine, and it just has functions and operations, hinge-wise, rotation-wise. Muscles in the body only shorten. There's no muscle that can push away, but you have opposition. You have opposing parts of the body. So on the arm, on the front of our arm, there's a bicep. On the rear of our arm, there's triceps. And yes, there's 2 biceps, because like a bicycle, there's actually 3 heads to a tricep, because like a tricycle, right? The numbers 2 and 3. But as far as they're on opposite sides of the bone of the upper arm, the humerus, okay? I know my anatomy to the degree that I know it. There's a lot that I don't know about it as far as this moment. But I know how the body works in a way that I couldn't have an opinion on. No opinion I could have, right? This episode here. So, yeah, episode 91 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I'm going to get into it. I'm going to talk about things like that because we talk about the skeletal system of the body and what people miss, physical therapists. And let me be very clear before I list anybody off. Everybody, including me, Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, until I was 24 years old. That's what I mean when people who are missing it as it is. I'm going to say this clearly now before I get into all the seemingly accusations things that I say. We can't be held accountable for what we don't know. And as I just said, I was 24 until I started to really understand the body, the only way it will ever work. And I'll get into this. There's no opinion that we have here under In the Image Clothing Company. But I speak things so bold because we have been told things. We have been told to do this to get the body to work. The body has these functions or these positions when it doesn't. And that's what I'm going to say right here when I'm saying what we miss as human beings if we're not seeing it as it is. The truth, apart from all of us, because our living God, Jesus the Christ, designed our bodies in his image, hence our company name, okay? In the Image Clothing Company. What we miss, whether you are, like I said, physical therapist, chiropractor, personal trainer, somebody who just is some type of anatomy person, or anybody who does anything with any physical function of the body at all, as it is a mechanical machine, what gets missed is the neutral position of everything within the body. The wrist has a neutral, and I'm not going to label every single joint, but I'll label quite a few right here. The elbow, the shoulder, the jaw, the spine, the hips, the pelvis is really what it's called, right? The knees, the ankles, that's what I'll label for right now. Just those are very major things that we can see. They all have a neutral. And from there, it can go one direction or it can go the other direction. But it always only has a neutral. Otherwise, there's not two ways that it could go. And the body functions with opposition. I say this, and I say it, and I say it in so many of the intros, just about all of them, at least at this time period. There is a center line to the human being. There's a sternum, the bone in the front of the rib cage. Directly behind that, still in the center, is the spine of the human being. There's a trachea, which is this tube in our neck, where both food, water, and air go through, and the nose. Those are the things that I talk about. And then the jaw stabilizes the entire body naturally, and it has to stay centered. So with that, what I'm saying is there's opposition, opposing things to the body. A bicep, and then opposing that, really opposing the bone in between, is the tricep. And I'll get into discussing more as we actually get into more of the discussion. But before I even get into the intro, before I have people clicking away because they think I have an opinion, that's what this episode is. There is no opinion I could have because of what I've said here. And then we'll just get quite deep into this, as deep as I do get, because in the Image Clothing Company, as I have said, it's going to be huge because no human in existence at any time period could have a say over the only way the human body will actually work, meaning residing in its only neutral, meaning standing just the way that the body will. I talk about how posture's not real. There's only how will the body stand vertically on an earth with gravity, using the least amount of energy, having all of its joints almost always residing in their only neutral, and having slight bends in all of the joints so that they can all be activated. If you take your elbow, you fully extend it, you actually deactivate the muscles that go into the functionality of the elbow because they need to be slightly into a little bit of a bend, which we call range of motion, right? From all the way closed of the elbow to all the way open. That's the fullness of range that the motion of the elbow will do. Okay, so that's what range of motion means within the body. It's like physics, it's like a lever system. It's like using a pulley or like a teeter-totter, seesaw, like a scale that has two things on each side and it will pivot on the center point. The body is just a machine, and it only will ever work the way that our God designed it. And that is how there is no opinion that I, Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, could have that could be valid at all. But we talk about the truth of the human body that applies to every human across the entirety of the earth and always will, because we look at it as it is. And I'm not deciding any of this, and I could not, okay? There's your preface for what this all will be, and a lot of discussion already. So, I'll get into this intro. It'll be a few minutes as it is, and then we'll get into the full depth of this discussion. In the Image Clothing Company has three sides to us. This side here, in the Image Clothing Company podcast, we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. It just is what it is, okay? And I try my best to keep all opinions out of everything that I ever discuss, in my own personal life as well, not just under the company that I am the founder of. We have another third of us, which is in the Image Clothing Company, the main side, is what I call it, because that's what it is. That's where this all stemmed from. The anatomy of the human body, as it is, we get talking about over there. I show clothing because it's the only thing placed onto us physically. If it's imbalanced at all, the human body potentially will be, and greatly. There's zippers, buttons, drawstrings, shoe lacing techniques, and then shoe tying, which play into the arches in our feet and the rotations of our body throughout the entirety of it. Things like heels on shoes, stretchy materials that the body's musculature can't activate against. The body's muscles only shorten. As I said earlier, stretch within clothing or the body itself is the opposing direction of the body's only working. The body only will work shortening its muscles. And so before I go farther, I don't normally mention this within the intros, but for this episode here, this is great to say right now as I'm discussing stretch in clothing and how we should never have it because it's unnatural and always will be truth, not my opinion. You should never stretch the human body. Now, there's times when maybe you've been in a cast and your muscles and all the things that go into the functionality of a joint have been so stiffened up because, let's use the elbow for this cast scenario, 6 weeks, 8 weeks within absolutely immobilized positioning of the elbow within a hard cast, you might have to do some quote-unquote stretching, but just to get the musculature back to its only full range of motion. You cannot and will not ever, no human to ever live, stretch your body past its full extension of each and every muscle within it, each and every joint within it. There's a full extension, a full contraction. We talked about that a few minutes ago with the elbow. That's the same with every single joint without the entirety, I said that in an episode or two back when I meant to say throughout the entirety of the body, okay? You can't stretch it farther than it will go, or you'll pop a bone out of its socket, or break a bone, or tear a muscle. But if there's other parts of the body that aren't in their only neutral, then you can stretch a certain part of it because there's already other parts compensating. But the body will only ever work as a whole, activated. As I discussed, quote-unquote posture, the body will stand very vertical, but slightly bent throughout every joint, just to stay activated. It will never work any other way, because it's like having your arm asleep and trying to walk. Your arms will naturally kind of swing very slightly to counteract the weight of your feet moving forward and back. And if one of them's entirely asleep, then the rest of your body is having to compensate for the arm not doing its job. So I get it. We've got amputations in some cases. We've got deformities. As we've addressed since the very founding of In the Image Clothing Company, we're individuals. But there is a baseline human being. And in the cases of an amputation, you will, it's just the case, have other parts of your body be compensating because you don't have a part of it that it was designed with as a whole. The foundational, what a human being is, how you can sit and read in a book because people have looked at human beings and see each and every bone that a human body has. There is a foundational human being because it's designed in the image of somebody who is not us, Jesus Christ. So we talk about sleeping, standing, sitting, walking, eating, staying hydrated, what that actually means, and how to do all these things naturally, just how to keep the body working the only way that it ever will. And I can be as bold as I could be about that because there is no opinion I could have. Episode 91 of the Image Clothing Company podcast, okay? But there's a lot of things within clothing that damage the body, and there's a lot going on nowadays. So we discuss all that we do relating to those things. As I've said, keyword allowing, which is the only thing we can ever do, the human body to work, okay? Then we also have In the Image Clothing Company music, where I show sizing and setups of guitars to allow the hands, which are essentially the shoulder, because they're directly determining what the other one is doing, to just work. And then the entire body as well from that point. Otherwise, there's just compensation if the hands are altered. So you can also hear music that I've made over there and all the things that we ever do and will discuss and talk about and get into with music. Okay, so as I've been discussing, there's only one way the body will ever work. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled There Is Only One. And I went over that within that episode. Because of that, it doesn't matter. If you are a man, if you are a woman, if you are tall, short, skinny, fat, if you are any age, or if you live on any part of the globe in any time period, the human body only has, as I'm saying, and as will be discussed quite thoroughly throughout this episode here, one neutral position in every joint. Otherwise, it can't work as a whole. And it only ever will in the ways that it was designed by somebody who is not us. Okay? I just want to be as clear as I can because I know how bold I speak. And so let me speak boldly about how I can speak so boldly. Okay? Pants need to be entirely above our hips. The pelvis, which is the whole structure of our hips, where the spine comes down and ends, and where the legs come up and end, where we hinge to bend over, and there's rotations, lots of muscles going into there, a big butterfly-looking structured bone, and kind of accumulation of bones that is the pelvis of the human being. The pants have to be completely up above that, so it's not restricting any of that functionality, because there's a lot going on in the hips. There's a lot. So with the angle of our waistband, it needs to be slightly higher in the front than the rear. There's no opinion. This will never change. The core muscles of the human body, as we've discussed, just because it's the truth, can only ever work if they shorten. It's called contracting, and that's how they activate. Again, they should and always naturally would just be activated. I will say this, it's like an apple. I've said this before, is why I say I will say it. I'll say it again here. You core an apple, take the center of it out where the seeds are, and the apple withers away. If you ever, and that's bold but truth, ever deactivate the core of the human being, the entirety of the body, from the core down to the tips of the toe, from the core out to the tips of the finger, and to the tip of the head, is damaged Because now, from its absolute center and core, that's the word that it actually is, it's not working. And the body's like this. It either works or it doesn't, because it only does work as a whole. And so if there's anything altering it at all, it's just not working. There's compensation happening. Things are out of their only neutrals, and that's it. There is only one working position of the body. Period and done. This is where the title of this episode comes in. There is no opinion I could have on that. No opinion I could have. None. No opinion. I could not. That's how I can speak so boldly on the things that we talk about under In the Image Clothing Company, because it's truth. It is apart from every one of us human beings. So the tops that we wear, there's a seam on top of our shoulders. And actually, if there's not, because you can have clothing stitched to where there isn't, it's ideal for there to be. If you have a seam on top of the shoulders and we place it behind the bones that are on the very peak of the top of the shoulder, then our shoulders will naturally follow where that seam is. And the shoulder's only neutral ever, for every human to ever live. Again, if you've got a deformity, you've got a very unique situation. But the actual way the human body is like set up, okay? Seriously, no opinion. The shoulders will only ever work behind the head. The muscles that raise and lower your shoulders, as I talk about within intros, they're called the upper trapezius muscles. They connect to the very base of the rear of the skull along the spine, which the spine that goes on the part of the body that's the neck is called the cervical spine. And as they're adhering there, they then come down and connect to the rear of the shoulder, and sort of on the top and the rear, but it's the back of the body. So that's where seams need to sit. When we have button-up type designs like I'm wearing now, there's often two seams, and so it's a band of material, and it sits behind the shoulders naturally anyway, so it keeps the shoulders in their only neutral position, where mine are now, as I'm talking, where mine always are. If you watch In the Image Clothing Company content on any three sides of the company, if you see me ever, unless my body's being damaged in that instant, I let my body work. I go before. I practice what I preach. Really, I preach what I have practiced, as that episode of In the Image Clothing Company states, and I discussed it, okay? Well, that episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast is what that was. Okay. So the edge seams of our shoulders have to be right at the edges, because there's just a ball and socket joint of the shoulder capsule. And it's just rotating, it's hinging, it's pivoting, and it's doing it just in the only location where two physical bones connect. There's more than two going into what the shoulder is, but you can't have any play in a bone. A bone won't bend and it won't change without breaking. So there's this very distinct edge to the shoulder where the seams need to be, because that's just the only place that the functionality of the shoulder is at. Okay? Now, two things that we talk about as prerequisites under In the Image Clothing Company are shoelacing and tags within clothing, because there's not always a lace in shoes, so it's a prerequisite that we talk about rather than just where clothing sits. When there is a rope weaved across the top of the human foot, you can only weave a rope and cause that pattern to shape the way that the top of the human foot is if you do it very specifically, right? There's only one way to do that, to just shape it a certain way. That's what we call In the Image Clothing Company's shoelace technique. It just doesn't alter the feet at all. Any and every other shoelace technique would. Period. No opinion I could have. I love this episode. With that, we tie our shoes evenly over to the center line of the human being, because there is and has to be one. It's a physical thing. okay? Gravity's pulling us straight down. Our feet oppose the center. Our hands oppose the center. And everything that there is two of on opposing sides of the body, okay? It's as real as it is, dude. There is no opinion I could have. That's why this is going to be huge. That's why this is eternal. That's why this is truth. That's why I sound like I'm screaming sometimes. Because you have to get through people's beliefs and what they have been told by all the people I listed off earlier and whoever else that just doesn't know. If you don't know, well, great. Welcome to In the Image Clothing Company. We do know here. And it's an insane gift I've been given to be able to see things as they are within what we talk about here. And the only way I have is because it's not something I could decide. Our God, Jesus Christ, designed our bodies in his image. That in itself is no opinion that I could have. So, yeah. Okay, it's just crazy, dude, how real it is. When we have tags in clothing, they're either causing a physical gap, changing the skeletal system's only workings, and or not allowing the musculature in that location that the tag is placed to activate against the tag. Then you have compensation trying to happen throughout the rest of the body, and as we established, you can't compensate for something that only works as a whole. So, let's get into this as deep as we do, talking about what we do. I'm going to talk about stretching right now. I talked about stretch within clothing. Something that's stretching is opposing activation of the body. Shortening is how muscles only will ever work. When you straighten your leg out to like kick forward, you're shortening your quadricep muscles, your thighs, the muscles on the top of the front of your leg. And those muscles shortening can only happen if the muscles that are on the opposing side, so the rear of the leg, which are the hamstrings, elongate, meaning get longer. I don't want to use the word stretch because they're only just going to their natural motions end point. There's no stretch beyond that. There's just the natural range of motion. All the way shortened, all the way elongated, okay? So the quadricep muscles to kick forward will shorten. The hamstrings in the rear will elongate because they're just on opposing sides of the bone of the upper leg, the femur. And so there's only a neutral between that, between the quadriceps extension or contraction and the hamstrings extension and contraction. And that neutral is like I was discussing how the human body would stand. Just very slightly bent, activated as a whole. And so that's the case with the entirety of the body. You can't stretch a muscle without having its opposing muscle be affected. So I'll talk about the hamstrings, and I've made a video on the main site of In the Image Clothing Company titled The Truth Behind Hamstrings. As far as I'm aware, that's where it is in the Truth Behind series. Hamstrings have to get shorter to work, just like every muscle within the body. If you stretch hamstrings because what you feel is you perceive tightness, what's actually happening is your hamstrings are already stretched past their only neutral. Because the hamstrings, the big muscles on the rear of the upper leg, if they contract, shorten, activate, all meaning the same thing, that takes our pelvis and puts it into its only neutral position. And if your pelvis is any lower in the front than the rear, well, that's why we have our intros as we do. Pants sit higher in the front than the rear, just slightly, but always, to keep those core muscles shortened, okay? The core muscles in the front of our abdomen and the hamstrings on the rear of our upper leg basically do the same thing. When you contract your core muscles in the front of your abdomen, it pulls the front of your pelvis up. And when you contract your hamstrings in the rear of your upper leg, it pulls the rear of your pelvis down. Really, they're just doing the same motion, but just kind of in opposing parts of the body. But they have to work together. The body only will ever work activated as a whole. No opinion I could have. But this is what happens, is people will be wearing pants with the waistline in an incorrect position, and that will both stretch your core muscles and your hamstrings, because the waistband of the pants is directly on the pelvis, which is between the core muscles and the hamstrings. And so if just one's affected, just the core alone deactivates, it changes the pelvis, so then the hamstrings will deactivate, and now they get tensed up, but they're tensed in a stretched position. So if you try to relieve the tension by stretching them farther, they're already being stretched. What you need to be able to do is contract all the body's musculature as a whole, only to get it to be in its only neutral. There's no workouts to ever do to a human being. But in situations where your body's altered because of things that we're probably just not aware of in those cases, I wasn't when these things were happening in my case, then it feels like maybe exercise would help. But that's why I always talk about exercise as being more damaging to the body than anything else, as far as than any benefit that it could have. Just, yeah, for the sake of exercising, it's actually damaging to the body. That's got to be heard how I'm saying it, not how you're hearing it, but that is the truth. It actually is. In any position of the body that is incorrect, that's not just always naturally activated as a whole. So, because of that, this is the thing. There's no opinion I could have, but it has to be seen as it is. It was this way from the first man and to the last. It's not Evan Strong that could have an opinion on this. But we don't see it because of the positions we're so chronically in, because of clothing. It's actually clothing. It is literally the sole cause. Regardless of whatever else could be in addition playing into the body's damage, it is clothing, period, and done. No opinion I could have because of what we just discussed with the waistband of the pants alone. And then there's many things within clothing that's just altering the body's only working position. So, I mean, muscles only contract in line. If there's any kind of rotation, a muscle will try to pull straight and it can't. Muscles have an insertion on one end and an insertion on the other end to be able to shorten the distance in between. And so there's only one inline tracking that can have throughout every joint in the entire body. No opinion I could have. But if you have heels on your shoes, if you have shoes tied unevenly, rotating the entire body, arches collapsed, taking the ankles out of their only neutral position, all things, anythings that we could ever talk about, and all the things that we do and have since the founding of In The Image Clothing Company. We're saying the exact same things and always will since the absolute first day we were labeled as In The Image Clothing Company, which was the 23rd of September 2024. I got my hands up. For those of you watching in audio, wow, you're not. For those of you listening in audio only, I want this as real as it is. There is no opinion I could have on the things we discuss here. I can be wrong, and sometimes maybe I am, but like what I'm discussing here, every single thing throughout this is how it is. I mean, it's not about me. It couldn't be. I didn't decide any of this. I didn't design the body. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled, I didn't design it, except it's not. It's titled, We Didn't Design It, We Can't Decide It. That's how this is. That's In the Image Clothing Company. That's the truth of all things. That's the gospel of Jesus Christ, our God, the one who did design it. So, there's no such thing as warming up. This sounds a little bit bold. It sounds a little bit maybe too perfect world type mentality. It sounds like maybe for you, but my body feels like this. You might be saying, but my hamstrings are tight, or whatever you want to talk about. I'm not saying your hamstrings are not tight. But again, if they're tight, it's because they're stretched. If a muscle is contracted, then it's working. It's not going to be able to be tight. It's activated. It's got blood flow. It's like alive, if you will. So that's how the body works, and only ever will, and always ever has, for every human to ever live. Activated as a whole. Really all any of this means, and anything ever we talk about, is if we never restricted our bodies by placing something onto them, they would just work. And that's it. That's the truth. No opinion I could have. So that's really, as we say, all we do under In the Image Clothing Company. And that's really what the word allowing means when we say that. We just get out of these chronic patternings. We allow clothing to sit on the body in its only neutral. Because that's all we can do. You will never train your body. It only has a neutral. You're not going to train to it. Neutral is you place your car into neutral and it will just roll wherever it's going to go if it's on a hill. If the body's in its only neutral, it'll just work. That's the truth. This is not some claim. This is no opinion I could have. Truth. Truth. Any other human could say this. It's the truth. It's not Evan Strong. I'm the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, but all I'm doing is sharing truth. Period and done. So you can't warm up a body that's just activated as a whole. When your body's activated, it's just working. It's already warm, quote unquote. It's already got blood flow. It's already turned on. It's already in its only neutrals that it will ever have. And it's just working. There's no warming up. Because I see people play sports, and I used to stretch before things. I used to do a lot of flips, parkour, front flips, back flips, side flips, Websters, gainers, right? A lot of soccer. I used to mountain bike so often, so I get it. When I talk about exercise like not being necessary, that's what I mean is what I clarified earlier. Just for the sake of exercising. Yeah, let's use the body, but in its only working position. But I'll see people, because now there's no such thing as warming up for Evan Strong in modern day, because I allow my body to do what my God designed it to do, the only thing it ever will. I'm hit it and hit it and hit it and hit it. It is the truth. In times when I used to maybe do some stretching or kind of do what you call high knees, which means just lift your knees up to get your body to start to work when it just always can only ever operate working. Now there's no warming up that I do. I go play basketball, dodgeball, volleyball, soccer, and these are actual examples because within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, within the past month and a half, 2 months maybe, we've been having what we call sports nights each Thursday night at 7 p.m. Occasionally it's been at 8 p.m. And we go play these sports, the specific ones that I just mentioned. I do no stretching beforehand, no warming up beforehand. and no stretching after, no recuperating or recovering after. I don't have to sit down after, as I used to do, which was actually damaging to the body in a chair height, because that's nowhere near how the body works. And any weight on the hamstring in a chair deactivates the hamstring, which deactivates the core. We went over that actually clearly within this episode 91 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. No opinion I could have. I explained the anatomy of how the hamstrings are kind of essentially the core, like how the hand is essentially the shoulder, the feet are essentially the hips, but really the body will only ever work as a whole. This is as real as it is. So people will be stretching and doing these mobility warm-ups and trying to get their body to start working, but they're alive. That's why I used the word alive earlier in the way that I did. Like the muscles are alive, I said something like that, because there is only that or damage. There's only one way. Yikes. It's as real as it is. But we just don't know. And so that's why at the beginning I prefaced it with, I'm not trying to be accusations. And sometimes I sound like I'm trying to blow people's house down like the big bad wolf. But I have to pierce through people's beliefs and things that aren't their fault for believing, but other people told them. And they just didn't know better in the time. But don't believe me. Do not. Please do not. So there's no opinion I could have on not needing to warm up. But I know how that seems weird to most all humans on the earth in 2025. And maybe going forth. It might be 100 years 100 years down the road. There's no future. That's why I stopped. It could be 1,000 years from 2025. You might be that far down the road from today's date where I'm speaking, and this applies to you as well. This is truth, eternal. Jesus the Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. This is the truth of all things. And very specifically worded in this case, this is the truth of the human body's only function. And boy, am I bold, and nobody could possibly dispute what I am saying, because it's not my words. I'm just relaying the truth. Forever, this is how it is for a human being's body's function. So, yes, because there should also be no cooling down after exercising. Your heart rate, if it's been elevated from its resting while you're exercising, will go back to its resting, and maybe your body's temperature has increased some and things like that because you're putting more effort into your body's motion and right? But the body's still as activated, still as working before you exercise, during your exercise, and after your exercise. Otherwise, it's being damaged in that instant and continually, always, if it's not activated as a whole. There's no opinion I could have. And it's the beauty of it is it's not something to get to. It's not a sales pitch. I know it's April Fool's Day. That's why I said it's so ironic. It's the truth. I love that it's April Fool's Day for this because who knows what I'm saying, right? But that's what I say with everything is don't believe me. Truly, you don't have to. But this is the actual manifesting to yourself truth. If you're on any part of the earth and you're watching/listening to this episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 91, titled No Opinion I Could Have, at any time period ever, this is how the body works. So, yeah. Because I was talking to my mom earlier and explaining a lot of this, and I was like, yeah, I'll probably make this episode today, and we'll title it No Opinion I Could Have. Because I was mentioning to her, as I've said before, even within In the Image Clothing Company podcast, because there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Sleeping Truths. When you're unconscious and your body is still doing all its functions subconsciously, your body's physical operation is still as activated as a whole as it is when you wake up. So this is, right, no opinion I could have. You shouldn't have to wake up, meaning the body won't. if it's working. And that's so bold, but truth. If it's working, right, that's so blunt. It shouldn't have to wake up from sleeping and almost like recover. Because I was discussing with my mom, I remember I used to wake up and you'd feel like groggy, you're stretching out, which again, the body only has its one working neutral position within all of it. So, Sleeping Truths, the episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, we discussed there how to let that be the case. And so, you don't need to try to replenish your body's liquid basically immediately and yawn and stretch and try to get rid of the grogginess that you're experiencing. If your body's always working, it's always in just about the exact same state of being. And that's the only way that it actually does anything. And boy, is that bold. But boy, that is the truth. No opinion I could have. And my body, just because I've allowed it to, and I'm doing all that I can in all cases to, firstly, for this reason, as far as the company goes, be the example, but also just, we all have been given just one fleshly body in this earthly life. And this is all we can do, is let it work. Allow it to stay activated as a whole. That's all that we'll ever do at all, period. So whether I had a company or not, if I knew these things, I would be just as intentional because it's just my own personal life. So I'm speaking out of experience. As in, I'm telling you it as it is because this is how it is for my personal body in the moment I'm saying these words right now, sitting on the ground. My body's entirely activated as a whole. And you can notice things like my arms are up when I talk. We've got hundreds of In the Image Clothing Company videos if you take each 3 sides. There's probably somewhere 450, 500 videos, give or take, all 3 sides collectively as of today's date, the 1st of April, 2025. And when you watch me talk, my shoulders work, and it's different than a lot of humans nowadays because, well, this is the only way the body does work. But if you're not intentional in allowing it to, there's so many damaging things we label as quote-unquote clothing, which are almost majority nowadays oil, which is polyester. It's just pumped out of the earth and processed and placed onto the human being. And then all the other things that we talk about in balance-wise, stretch, right? You can't raise your own shoulders, but your shoulders will only work if they can raise. Otherwise, they're just not working, right? It's that cut and dry. It actually is. So this is the whole thing about it. I can't make it something it isn't. I mean, you're watching me speak. You watch my arms work. You watch when I talk, my wrists are neutral. You watch when I stand, I have what people call quote-unquote good posture, meaning my body's activated as a whole. There's no opinion I could have, and in fact, I've given you a visual example plus verbal in-depth explanations on how this is the truth. And you don't have to believe me. In fact, I say, please do not. So this is why I'm bold, okay? This is such a beautiful episode because people just don't see what they don't see. I'm a people as well, as I word it, right? I mean, we're just human beings. We don't know everything, but I deeply, deeply, deeply know the human body. More so than some of those other professions I listed off earlier. I'm not comparing, but the whole point of quote-unquote knowing how the human body works is to then let it. And what they're telling you doesn't work because you go back to the chiropractor, you're going back to the physical therapist, you're going back to get a massage and whatever else it is. Medications that don't help you, but you hope, right? We have the actual truth here. Don't believe me, but I couldn't have an opinion on it. Wouldn't matter if I did or didn't. It's just the truth. So there's no opinion I could have. I didn't go through all the body, obviously. I mean, there's a lot more parts to the body than what I've mentioned within this, but that's the case for every single part of the human flesh. Stretching is more damaging than it could ever possibly even be beneficial. You stretch one thing and something else now is taking over. For the excessively elongated side, the opposing side now has to be doing something excessive that could be trying to oppose that, but there isn't something. So you're just kind of tweaking the body weirdly. There's only a neutral. That's the focus, right? And it's like a metaphoric thing in itself. Staying centered. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled that exactly, okay? But in all cases, in all ways, that's really what we have to do. The neutral positions are a center to the opposing this way or that way of every part of the body. So, yeah, things like how to get good posture, quote unquote. You're just putting your body excessively in one end of its opposing neutral. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Because we don't see it until we do. That's why the phrase that I use so often is what it is. It's as obvious as it is once you see it. No opinion I could have. Period and done. This is another thing physically within the human body. You notice the way that I like sit here and talk once I start to say this, because it's crazy. It's dumbfounding to myself as well because of, not knowing this for 24 years. Holy cow. Yeah, truthfully, I didn't, right? But people will talk about shifting weight when you stand. There's a center line where my hands just went. I put my hands in the position kind of like you imagine people putting their hands together to pray. For those of you in audio only, there's a description of what I did. At my center, at my sternum and my spine, right below my trachea, underneath my nose, no opinion that I could have, the body has a center and has to. Otherwise, pain, damage, and so many problems come, okay, that I've experienced myself as well. The feet grip inward. Arches of the feet, that neutral ankle, again, neutral, no opinion I could have. Outward curvature of the lower leg all the way down to the very base of our heel of our actual fleshly foot, not what we place onto it and call a shoe. That's why our feet have to be flat on the earth. That's the only way they will ever work. You elevate the heel by placing something underneath it, then you have snaking front to back up the entire body out of its only neutral. Now, if you ever do any exercising or workouts, this is what I mean. It's only damaging. No benefits are happening because you're putting your body into a position it never will work in by having a heel on a shoe any higher than the toe, and your whole entire body from your foundation at its very lowest point on an earth with gravity now travels up in a snake front to back. Just meaning, as I said, I'm going to very clearly say it again, putting your body out of its only neutral. And then people go on a run or workout or whatever. And that's just a heel on the shoe. Meaning all things within clothing that are an imbalance are an imbalance. Oversized clothing itself is an imbalance. Period and done. No opinion I could have. That's how and why I am so bold. Okay. So, yes, the feet oppose the center line of the body. I've discussed what the center line is multiple times within this here specific episode, episode 91 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled No Opinion I Could Have. The arches grip inward. The right foot pulls in, opposing the left foot, pulling in. And we stand, just because that's naturally the position that the feet would be in, on the outside of the feet. Because, meaning the reason that's the position the feet would naturally be in, is because if they are pointing straight, the direction we're going, rather than pointing out, right, an external rotation, rather than evenly neutral pointing forward, so you have internal and external at the feet, which are essentially the hips, as real as it is, no opinion I could have. Well, there's actually an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, one of the more recent ones from this point back, titled, It's Not Outside Yourself. So, external rotation is, meaning the feet pointing out, okay? If the feet are pointing neutral and straight, and you follow the lower leg and its natural outward curvature, just because that's the way the physical bone is shaped, the lower leg bones actually curve outward down to the heel, then naturally your feet will just be on the outsides of them, because that way there's an arch. You can't have an arch there if your feet aren't mostly on the outsides. I'm not going to get so into describing how that exactly works, just because it would take time. I don't want to, because that's what I said earlier about I haven't touched on every single part of the body. Well, because I don't need to all in this one single episode here. I just want to make it so clear that there's no opinion I could have on the things we talk about. I just want to give enough context that I need to within this episode. So if you shift your weight, well, okay, because that's what I mean, right? When I was saying I don't want to discuss all of exactly how an arch grips, but gosh, maybe I will. I mean, I can. It's not that I don't know how to put it into words. I don't know how long this is going to be, and I could run out of storage space on what I'm filming this on, but the arch pulls in, and you can't pull inward at the feet unless it's the outmost part of the feet pulling inward. Because if you were to try to pull like in from each foot to the center line of the human being, and the weight's like on the inside of your foot, which just means that your arches have then collapsed. Well, now the outside's not doing anything, and right? If you're pulling something to the center, you have to pull it from the farthest out part. So the outside of the part of the feet grip, and that actually rolls the feet up into their neutral point. Because if the inner part of your feet actually get onto the ground, like we just said, all that means is that your arches have then collapsed just because of all the operation and joints within the foot. That will then literally force your feet to point out, because those bones have to go somewhere. It's like my hands. I can't point my hands like this forward and flatten them without putting my fingers out, just because the bones will just hit into each other, right? That's what I mean. There's no opinion I could have. It's a physical hitting of bones together. So, yeah, the feet have to point forward. That's why it's as real as it is in the Image Clothing Company shoelacing technique. We don't own it. I can't own a way to tie a knot with a rope, or to weave a rope through holes that we call eyelets of shoes that we then label a shoelace. We can't own those things, but we just label it in the Image Clothing Companies because it's what we use. There's no opinion I could have. There's no possible way you can lace your shoes otherwise without damaging your whole body. No opinion I could have. None. There isn't. So there's no opinion to any of the stuff that we talk about here. I just want it as clear as it could be, because it's as real as it gets. It's as real as it is what I say, because it just is what it is. And so there you go. You've been misled, and it's not your fault in the ways that it isn't, as it wasn't mine when I didn't know either. So, yeah. Yeah. That might be all we say within this episode. Yeah. This is crazy, dude. I could go across any part of the planet that we have and stand in front of a single human. Stand on a stage in front of 1,000, 20,000 humans and say these exact things that I'm saying within episode 91 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled No Opinion I Could Have. The same things that I've been saying since the actual founding date of In the Image Clothing Company. And even before then, when I was figuring stuff out but hadn't started a quote-unquote company yet, which really just means I've organized this information and now we can have multiple people here and we can sell some good clothing that'll just do what we need it to and always will need to happen as human beings, right? It's just as real as it is. There's no opinion I could have. And so, yeah, I might be standing on stages in person with people, delivering this information. I love speaking, and I'm really good at it. I'm good at explaining things in ways that people can understand. And I said that since actually on the 23rd of September 2024, our official founding date of In The Image Clothing Company, I made a video, like a launch video. And in that video, I said that we will have meetups. And yeah, I'm not guaranteeing something, and I don't have it planned as of today's date, but yeah, I mean, I probably will be. And I've mentioned it within in the Image Clothing Company podcast. On stages, not for the sake of me like being on a stage, but just because that way I can be, where people can see me easily, and I'll be showing this information because there's no opinion I could have. And I just want to help people. I remember being a little kid and just wanting to help. Everyone asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I'm like, I just want to help people, because I was always so hurt by people. Yikes, truly. And this will help every single human. There's some things in life that just kind of wouldn't really help people so much, but might really help another one. But every single human being has a human body, and it only works one way, even within our unique structures. You're taller, shorter, skinnier, fatter. You're a man and she's a woman, and you're from this part of the earth and they're from that one, and your skin's black and theirs is brown, and that guy's extremely white. We're just a human flesh. It's just a physical machine. So there's no opinion I could have on its operations. And I want to be clear. The people who just don't know, I have been clear, but I'm going to say it again in even, a little bit deeper of a way. We can't be held accountable for what we don't know. So I'm not saying, before I say that, and I will finish that, I will say, on this end of it first, there are a lot of cases, doctors and all the people I listed at the beginning in those professions and similar things, there are a lot of them who do know how the body works, but they have a business. And I've talked about this, right? People make a lot of money from surgeries, from orthotics, from visits to clinics, from all these things, even just a professional, quote unquote, opinion, right? What does it mean to be a professional if you're not actually saying real information? See what I mean? It's not their fault, though, because they're doing all they can in the ways that they are the people who are genuine about it. Okay, so you've got both sides. People who know how to make money because they know more than others, and then people who don't quite know how it's supposed to be, but they're really trying. And then we have In The Image Clothing Company, where it's not about us. Your doctor will tell you, yeah, I've done this. I've seen this 1,000 times. I know what you need. Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, I always say, do not believe me. Meaning, truth manifests itself. You don't have to believe me. And I don't have to be right. But what I'm saying is true. So, there's no opinion I could have. I just know how great it is from personal experience today, even to wake up. I'm going to kind of just like reiterate some of the things I've said within here. Not have to feel like I need to recoup from what really is the recuperation, which is sleep, right? Not have to, quote unquote, warm up because there's no such thing. If the body's going to, quote unquote, cool down to a state that's just not working, the body should always, and only always will, work as a whole, activated. No opinion I could have. I just know how great it is to have it be the case. Have a body that's working the way that God designed it to actually be. I know how great it is to have what people would label quote unquote good posture. I'm going to turn sideways for this episode just for a second because, yeah, on the other sides of the company and wherever you do see me and have seen me, you've seen me standing. There's many places you can, is what I mean if you haven't. But I'm most always sitting forward looking at this camera. Keep in mind, though, the body works with a slight bend in everything. If you get your body entirely straight, you've actually deactivated it. So posture only gets so vertical until now you're damaging your body, right? Exercise is only a quote-unquote good thing to do if it's just meaning you're allowing your body to move through the earth the only way that it will ever do any movement that it does. See? I'll turn for a second. So this is how I'm sitting. I'm against the wall when I'm against the wall in these episodes, but nice and vertical. But again, no opinion I could have on this. People often think you need to get your spine of your neck, meaning the cervical spine, entirely straight. But as we talk about, and you can see on me because I've got a pretty low body fat percentage and I'm quite skinny. My muscles in ways just naturally protrude, right? My upper trapezius muscle here, you can see, I'm not looking at the monitor right now, so I don't know exactly in this moment, but I've seen it in videos on the main side of the Image Clothing Company. You can actually see the outline of my upper trapezius, and it connects to the very base of the rear of the skull and along the spine down to the shoulder, only ever behind the head. So if you try to get your posture, quote unquote, so straight up that you're actually deactivating your muscles, well, then you've just done what we just said, deactivated your muscles. So when I'm talking, my shoulders are here, behind my head still, the entirety of the time that I'm a human being, now, because I allow, keyword, my body to work, because I'm the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, Evan Strong. Just meaning, no ego, but I know what I'm talking about. But the way that I can say that and not be egoic is because you don't have to believe me. But it's just the truth. It manifests itself to you. So, well, like the internal rotation I sit with when I'm sitting here. People are in external rotation and they can't even lift their own body up, and you hear it in their voice like this, you know? I'm not trying to forcefully make my voice sound quieter. I'm actually pushing it harder, if you can tell, to try to get like this fullness and boisterousness. But what I did there when I changed is I just went back to internal rotation, right? Closer to my only center line that my body will ever have, where the strength of the body is. It's the strongest at its core, at its center. The farther out you go, like the episode I referenced earlier, it's not outside yourself. Everything's harder, away from your own being. So, yeah, I mean, my voice, like I'm kind of pushing it right now, but I talk loud. Naturally. I don't intentionally push it just when I'm speaking, and sometimes I'm very loud. But I didn't used to, because watch, I'll just keep talking, but I'll just put myself in external rotation. That's not a joke. You can hear how like it sounds a little bit closed off and stuff. I put my hips in external rotation and my shoulders in external rotation. But now, well, what's really happened is, again, my body in this case isn't working as a whole. Half of its rotations being internal are just entirely turned off. So now allowing my body to just get back to working as a whole, what's so cool is this is in visual as well as audio. So if you're an audio only, you might think I'm putting something between the mic and my mouth or putting something over my mouth to make it sound different. You can visually see this if you can, right? It's as real as it is. That's why I'm saying there's no opinion I could have. I have a boomy, boisterous voice. The actual like octave of my voice, right? I've got a deep voice. When I sing, I'm a bass. I've got a deep voice, and so there's already more resonance to deeper sound than higher pitched sound. But as far as how it projects, and you notice I don't clear my throat. I mean, hardly ever. And I'll have podcast episodes that are 2 hours long of me continuously talking and quite volumized like this, right? I rarely ever swallow the way that you see people seeming like they have excess saliva in their mouth that they're needing to get out of their way. There's no opinion I could have. If you let your body work activated as a whole, keyword let, right, in that sentence, that's the only way it ever will work. And what we talk about under In the Image Clothing Company is actually, literally, the only way to have it be that. Unless just not wearing clothing at all. But we wear clothing for many reasons, and they're very good ones. Modesty being the only reason we would need, but, right, as we discussed, to protect us from the sun, sunburns, from the cold, excessively, or excessive warmth, or scraping against things, protecting our feet. We wear shoes, but they have to be flat on the earth. Zero drop is the term, which just means no elevation, heel to toe. You take your shoes off, now your feet are how they would be, always, unless altered. There's no opinion I could have. So people, because I was talking to my friend the other day, on Sunday, 2 days ago, and he wears cowboy boots. Cool. That's something he's chosen to wear. I'm not getting after him, but I told him the truth. No opinion I could have. I'm not trying to tell you there's something wrong with boots. I'm telling you, boots with a heel change your entire body to the tip of your head and the tips of your fingers. Because of what I was saying earlier, which is elevating the heel of the human being. It will change the entire body entirely. But even your internal organs, they'll just sit in a different location. Your lungs will expand and contract only partially and in an incorrect patterning that will then become chronic. So there's no opinion I could have. I love how I did the voice thing. I did it with my mom earlier when I was talking to her. I'll do it again for just a second here. I'll just kind of like put my shoulders out and just let my core deactivate. But I'm going to stop it. I only did it for that long that time because it's actually hard to do. It's hard for me to make myself a physical example of the way that people often stand in these chronic patternings that we're getting out of because it's so unnatural, and I've allowed my body to be natural from this point forth. It will never go back to altered unless I alter it, right? Things like that as well. No opinion I could have. These are permanent fixes. You can have a diet, you can have an exercise, workout, stretching, yoga routine, anything on any end of what those things are related to. Those are conditional on continuing to do them. Otherwise, the quote-unquote benefits go away. Muscle mass you build goes away. Stretching that you have somehow gained, again, that's just meaning other parts of the body are altered as well, because there's opposing things in every muscle, every joint. Well, and within the gospel of Jesus Christ, the truth of all things, there's opposition in all things. It's worded that way in Scripture. So, yes, the Book of Mormon, the Holy Bible, true doctrine, true accounts of our living God, Jesus the Christ, tell us the truth of all things. That's what we talk about here, okay? Anyway, I was telling my friend, your boots are altering your entire body. And I'm not trying to tell you you can't wear boots, but I have every ability to speak the truth to you, because any other human could say the exact same thing. You could find it out yourself as well. There's no opinion I could have that those boots are altering your entire physical being, okay? No opinion I could have. So there's a lot of things like this, and they're all the things that we discuss here, meaning all the things that we do discuss here are like this. I mean, unless I'm just saying something one time, just like talking about something here or there, giving a story or whatever, right? But what we're talking about with the body's function under In the Image Clothing Company is stuff we could not have an opinion on. It would just be absolutely invalid if we did try to have some opinion. We discuss the truth. So, okay, that's it. I think we actually will wrap it up now. Yeah. My jaw popped. You were able to see what happened if you're watching in visual. So, right, half-sized guitars. No opinion I could have. That's the ideal. Somewhere around the measurements of a half-sized guitar. full-sized guitars, as this one is here, I've discussed it, right? There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled The Greatest Battle. I went over my experience with having 20 guitars up until today's date and all the setups I've done. Also, there's just In the Image Clothing Company music as a whole third of our company, but no opinion I could have, okay? There isn't damage within the body otherwise. Otherwise meaning in every case of anything ever as a human being, anything opposing the one and only truth that there is, Jesus the Christ, damage in all aspects of existence. Okay, there's no opinion I could have that the gospel of Jesus Christ is the truth of all things either. I've been talking about this often in recent episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. The gospel is literal. The metaphors, phrases, parables, you just might not quite see it, just as I, in times, didn't quite see what I do now. But it is literal. It's the truth of all things. There's no opinion I could have. Christianity, quote unquote, under the umbrella of what that could mean, isn't a religion to choose from. It's the actual truth for every human to ever live, because we all were designed by, in, and through Jesus Christ in his image. There's no opinion I could have. That's why it's as bold as it is. There's only one truth. So, we will have clothing available when we do, made out of 100% natural materials. There's no opinion I could have. The human body's natural. We are only what we have eaten, an accumulation of earth. Natural materials, cotton, come from the earth. So that's how we allow the body to work material-wise. Staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work, right, in the Image Clothing Company clothing. If you'd like to purchase it, okay, when it's available. As of today's date, it isn't yet. Do all you can to get it in your size. We show very clearly, and there's no opinion I could have, where clothing has to sit, all right? So, yes, thank you, and thank you. Oversized clothing, so damaging. No opinion. I couldn't have one that could be any ounce of valid. So, today's the 1st of April. Silly enough, right? 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. There's so many things within the human body's function that we discuss and how to just allow them to be that I haven't mentioned within this. I just chose some things that are pretty controversial and very misunderstood and discuss them as they are within this one here. Because we talk about so much more than what I've just mentioned in this. But so much of it's already documented, and it will continue to be as we go. As I said, almost certainly, not me making some promise or guarantee, but I will be in person with people, like, on a stage type of setup. And we will talk about these things, and I will give actual face-to-face explanations and discussions of all of this, because it will never change. There's no opinion I could have. So, thank you.